Number 10. Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol. Kicking off this brand new list of 10 more of my favorite Christmas TV specials is, appropriately enough, the first ever animated Christmas special produced specifically for television. J. Quincy Magoo's first appearance was in the 1949 theatrical cartoon short The Ragtime Bear, of which he was the breakout star and is considered to be one of the first ever major human cartoon characters to come out of this era of animation. Portrayed by character and voice actor Jim Backus, Mr. Magoo is a wealthy, elderly man who was so nearsighted he would inadvertently cause havoc wherever he went, but his endless good luck kept him safe from whatever chaos happened around him. He continued starring in theatrically released cartoons, some of them even winning Oscars, but by the early 60s, TV became the real focus, so Magoo headed to the small screen. In 1962, he starred in Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol, a rather faithful musical retelling of the classic Dickens tale, even though when Magoo is in Scrooge mode, his signature lack of sight is no longer an issue, which sort of undercuts Magoo's entire shtick. Regardless, while not my favorite version of the Dickens story, Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol is a historically significant and fun take on the material.
Come, Magoo, how you done it again? By George, I brought down the house.
Number 9. A Chipmunk Christmas. Long before Alvin and the Chipmunks became fuzzy little computer-generated fart jokes, they were simply the result of some recording experimentation conducted by musician and record producer Ross Bagdasarian, who originally gained notoriety in the late 50s when he released the novelty song Witch Doctor under the stage name David Seville. This was Bagdasarian's first attempts at experimenting with recording speeds, which gave his own voice a comically high, squeaky pitch. He then recorded a 3-track harmonization of his own voice, raised the pitch, and thus gave birth to the Chipmunks. Alvin, Simon, and Theodore, along with their talent manager and human father figure, Dave Seville. Christmas has gone hand in hand with the Chipmunks since the very beginning, with one of their first major hits being 1958's Christmas Don't Be Late, which quickly reached the top of the Billboard charts and won 3 Grammy Awards. The popularity of Chipmunks records would lead to comic books and cartoons, including a primetime animated special, A Chipmunk Christmas, which NBC originally aired on December 14, 1981. The special features a severely sick boy named Tommy, whose health improves after Alvin gifts him with his own prized harmonica. But after Dave taps Alvin to perform a harmonica solo at their upcoming Christmas concert at Carnegie Hall, Alvin finds himself in quite a pickle. Even though Alvin and the Chipmunks were originally created as just a mere novelty, the humor and emotion behind A Chipmunk Christmas proves why these characters have persisted for over 60 years. Number 8. A Flintstone Family Christmas. Nearly 30 years before The Simpsons were ever a glimmer in Matt Groening's eye, animation pioneers William Hanna and Joseph Barbera created America's first ever primetime animated family, The Flintstones, which put a prehistoric spin on the typical domestic sitcom for 6 seasons. And until The Simpsons came along, it remained the longest-running animated TV series ever produced. Over the years, The Flintstones saw their share of specials, features, and spin-offs. But in the early 90s, the modern Stone Age family made a huge comeback leading up to the notorious 1994 big-budget live-action film starring John Goodman and Rick Moranis. In 1993 alone, ABC aired 2 made-for-TV animated movies where babies Pebbles Flintstone and Bam Bam Rubble had grown up and gotten married, which were closely followed up by A Flintstone Family Christmas, where Fred and Wilma adopt a troublemaking juvenile delinquent named Stoney. As a somewhat casual fan of the Flintstones franchise, this Christmas special is certainly one of my favorites and has been an annual must-watch for me ever since its 1993 debut.
Who's Flintstone? Merry Christmas!
Number 7. A Colbert Christmas, the greatest gift of all. Decades before taking over David Letterman's late-night throne, improv comedian and actor Stephen Colbert was a featured player on Dana Carvey's short-lived primetime sketch comedy series, and starred alongside Amy Sedaris in the cult favorite high school comedy Strangers with Candy. But it was becoming a correspondent on Comedy Central's long-running spoof news program, The Daily Show, that earned him greater recognition. Under host Jon Stewart, Colbert adopted the comedic persona of a contrarian, blowhard, yet absent-minded Fox News type that eventually carried over to his own Daily Show spin-off, The Colbert Report, which ran from 2005 to 2014. In 2008, The Colbert Report premiered its own Christmas special, a parody of vintage holiday variety shows peppered with Colbert's signature satirical jabs at American conservatism, with guest stars including country singers Willie Nelson and Toby Keith, whom I can't tell is aware of how dopey this thing makes him look, along with musicians John Legend, Feist, and Elvis Costello. While not every joke lands perfectly, A Colbert Christmas is overall a hilariously absurd addition to your Christmas rotation.
In fact, I'm so excited right now, I'm sporting a Yule log.
Number 6. A Garfield Christmas Special. Cartoonist Jim Davis was never shy to admit that his instantly recognizable creation, a fat orange ball of furry sarcasm known simply as Garfield, was always intended to be an easily marketable character. But after his Funny Pages debut in 1978, it took a few years for Garfield's look to fully evolve into one of the world's most recognizable cartoon felines, and probably even more so than his highly popular, widely syndicated newspaper comic strip. The countless toys, games, cartoons, and suction cup plush dolls and car windows catapulted Garfield into global pop culture stardom. As early as 1980, when his comic strip was only 2 years old, Garfield first made the leap from comic panel to TV screen for the Fantastic Funnies, an hour-long CBS special produced by longtime Peanuts animators Bill Melendez and Lee Mendelsohn. In the following years, Garfield appeared in numerous primetime animated specials and a long-running Saturday morning cartoon series where character actor Lorenzo Music gave Garfield his definitively dry, sardonic voice. And the night of December 21st, 1987 saw the premiere of the Emmy-nominated Garfield Christmas special, where Garfield, Odie, and their owner John Arbuckle visit John's family farm for Christmas. With plenty of funny moments, songs featuring R&B artist Lou Rawls, and a classic holiday feel, A Garfield Christmas special is not just a fan favorite, but a long-time family Christmas tradition.
You sure are packing the food away tonight, Grandma.
I'm eating for two now, dear.
Number 5. Tales from the Crypt, All Through the House. It all began in the early 50s, when pulp magazine publisher EC Comics unleashed Tales from the Crypt, a grotesque, funny, and over-the-top horror anthology series that was abruptly canceled in early 1955 after the U.S. Senate's infamous Subcommittee on Juvenile Delinquency led to the implementation of a strict content censoring code within the entire comic book industry. In the early 70s, British film producer Milton Subotsky, who was a huge fan of the old Tales from the Crypt comics, along with his business partner Max Rosenberg, bought the rights from EC Comics publisher William Gaines to make a Tales from the Crypt anthology horror film, which was released in 1972. The film's first segment starred actress Joan Collins and was based on a memorable story that originally appeared in a 1954 issue of the Tales from the Crypt sister series, The Vault of Horror. All Through the House is the story of a greedy housewife who kills her husband on Christmas Eve, only to then be stalked inside her own house by an escaped homicidal mental patient dressed as Santa Claus. Nearly 20 years later, HBO developed a brand new Tales from the Crypt television series, which has easily become the most iconic incarnation of this classic property, as it didn't pull any punches with its gloriously gory effects, groundbreaking animatronics, and its massive star power. Only 2 episodes into its run, the show did its own retelling of All Through the House, starring Mary Ellen Trainor as the craven housewife and Larry Drake as the unforgettably demented-looking killer Santa Claus. This Yuletide installment of one of the greatest horror shows to ever haunt the small screen may not be what everybody is looking for when it comes to Christmas TV specials, but if you're into that kind of thing, it's a wicked good time.
Naughty or nice?
Number 4. Tiny Toon Adventures, It's a Wonderful Tiny Toons Christmas Special. Not long after 1988's Who Framed Roger Rabbit sparked new interest in classic Looney Tunes cartoons, producer Steven Spielberg collaborated with Warner Bros. Animation on a new Looney Tunes-type series for the next generation, Tiny Toon Adventures. which faithfully captured the spirit of the classic shorts with its hilariously brutal cartoon violence, rapid-fire humor, and full orchestral musical scores. Added to the mix were plenty of classic and contemporary pop culture references that would have easily flown over the heads of most of its target demographic, making it a big hit with both adults and kids, and the massive popularity of the Emmy-winning series would lead to more acclaimed shows from Warner Bros. Animation. During its relatively brief run, 98 episodes were produced, along with 2 holiday-themed specials and a direct-to-video feature that came up in my last Top Spots countdown. The show's final regular episode was the fantastic Christmas special that originally aired on Fox in prime time on December 6, 1992, which plays as a pretty clever parody of the 1946 Jimmy Stewart classic It's a Wonderful Life, where Buster Bunny is given the chance to witness what his hometown of Acme Acres would be like had he never existed. If you were ever a fan of Tiny Toon Adventures, then this is the perfect Christmassy twist on the sharp humor and pop culture riffing that made the show great to begin with.
Prepare yourselves for a dynamite performance, executives!
Number 3. A Beavis and Butthead Christmas.
Nothing like a good Christmas classic.
Before becoming a professional animator and filmmaker, Mike Judge worked in Silicon Valley and toured in a blues band. But by the late 80s, he began creating short animated films, including the basis for what would become his 1999 live-action directorial debut, Office Space, and a short featuring 2 brain-dead high school students, Beavis and Butthead. After the short was featured on MTV's experimental animation showcase series, Liquid Television, Beavis and Butthead got their own MTV series in 1993, which quickly became both insanely popular and somewhat controversial. It became the voice of early 90s youth culture, despite constantly satirizing it, and in 1995, their hilarious 2-part Christmas special made its idiotic debut, which put a unique spin on Dickens' A Christmas Carol and It's a Wonderful Life, placing Beavis in the role of a sorta Ebenezer Scrooge in Part 1, before Part 2 has a guardian angel show Butthead how much better Beavis' life would have been had Butthead never existed. A Beavis and Butthead Christmas is the best possible Christmas present one could hope for when these 2 dumbasses are involved.
Christmas.
Number 2. South Park's Mr. Hankey, the Christmas Pooh. Ever since the very beginning, South Park creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone have juxtaposed a crude, primitive animation style with envelope-pushing humor and scathing social satire. But even in the years before it ever went to series, South Park has been rooted in Christmas, with Parker and Stone's characters first making their debut in a pair of holiday-themed shorts that became early viral sensations online and eventually generated interest from TV networks. And you could say that even before his infamous Season 1 debut, Mr. Hankey, a cheery, adorable, talking piece of shit, helped shape what South Park would become. Initially, Fox showed interest in the series, but it was the inclusion of a talking piece of poo that ultimately killed the deal. So Comedy Central came knocking and developed what would become the edgy cartoon show that officially put the cable network on the map. Series co-creator Trey Parker claims that the inspiration for Mr. Hankey came from his childhood, when his father came up with the character during Trey's toilet training days. Years later, the hilariously disgusting spoof of magical Christmas characters became a pop culture phenomenon during South Park's freshman year. Mr. Hankey the Christmas Pooh was first introduced to console a depressed Kyle Broflovsky, who couldn't celebrate Christmas with his friends due to his Jewish heritage. And Mr. Hankey's popularity has since led to many more appearances over the years, not to mention the merchandising and his 1999 Christmas album. 1 part Mickey Mouse, 1 part Great Pumpkin, and 1 part, well, turd. Mr. Hankey remains to be one of South Park's funniest and grossest creations, and his classic 1997 introductory episode has lingered ever since.
Kyle!
Say something, Mr. Hankey!
Number 1. America's longest-running animated family returns for my first Christmas specials countdown, which originally highlighted their 1989 Christmas episode, Simpsons Roasting on an Open Fire, marking not just the show's first ever holiday episode, but its first episode ever. Its significance as the show's debut episode, and because it was just a great Christmas story, made it the perfect candidate for my original list. But as far as holiday-themed Simpsons episodes go, my personal top spot would have to be Marge, Be Not Proud, the 11th episode of the 7th season, which premiered on December 17th, 1995. It begins with Bart literally salivating over the thought of owning Bone Storm, the season's hottest new video game.
So tell your folks, buy me, Bone Storm, or go to hell!
Buy me, Bone Storm, or go to hell!
Bart?
Marge refuses to buy him such an expensive and violent game, so out of desperation, Bart tries to sneak a copy out of the local try and save. But just when he thinks he's in the clear, he's accosted by the store's gruff security guard, Don Brodka, voiced by character actor Lawrence Tierney. After Bart comes clean, Marge's disappointment and subsequent coldness towards him is unlike anything he had ever felt from her before, and he does everything he can to win back a love he feels he's lost. An achingly relatable experience for anyone who had ever been in a similar situation as a kid. Produced back while the show was still in peak form, it's chock full of classic quotable Simpsons moments, but its heartfelt story is what fills it with genuine holiday spirit, and also why it tops my second round of Christmas TV specials.
My little bitty Barty.
Mom.